Chapter 778, The Most Stupid Idiot. Chen Xinyan's father is a monster. A person like him should be sentenced to death. After this, I don't think Chen Xinyan can continue to survive in the entertainment industry. A father like this is a complete embarrassment. He will be a black mark for the rest of her life. He took drugs and drove under the influence of alcohol. A person like that should be torn to shreds. If her father is like that, I don't think Chen Xinyan would be much better. Chen Xinyan is sure unlucky. I heard that her father went missing when she was 6 years old. After so long, he finally returned, but he ended up ruining his daughter's future prospects. That's right, Chen Xinyan was well aware that after this incident, she would not be able to continue in the entertainment industry. In fact, she knew she couldn't stay around and implicate Zihao and Mo Ting. So, after the police were done with their interrogation, she stepped out of the room and bowed apologetically to the victim's family members. Regarding what my father has done, I give you my sincerest apology. I hope for your forgiveness. I will try my best to compensate for the pain that your loved one has suffered, even though I know that no material possession can make up for a precious life. You must be dreaming if you think I will forgive the two of you. No, Chen Xinyan responded. I am not asking for you to forgive my father. Everything is in the hands of the law. I am simply apologizing for my own actions. The family members remained emotional. One of them even rushed forward to grab onto Chen Xinyan's shirt and throw a slap across her face. At this time, Zihao had just arrived. As soon as he saw the scene in front of him, he rushed over, pulled Chen Xinyan away and shielded her behind his back. Chen Xinyan is also a victim. She lost her father when she was 6 years old. Now that he finally reappeared, the first thing he did was ask her for money. If you guys want to cause trouble, you should target the perpetrator. The family members quietened down as Chen Xinyan left the police station under Zihao's protection. I will look for a lawyer. No need, Chen Xinyan replied. Escort me to Hyatt Regency. I want some time to myself. Xinyan, from now on, I won't be able to appear in the entertainment industry again. At the same time, I can't possibly become the superstar that you want me to be. With this black mark, I will forever be known as a murderer's daughter, Chen Xinyan said in seriousness. That's why, we should cancel our contract. What do you mean by this? Zihao's expression became tense. I want to break up with you, Chen Xinyan said as she held back her tears. Chen Xinyan, I'm being serious. I don't want to stay in this industry. I'm tired. I want to go overseas with my mother and live my life in a place with no people. Chen Xinyan continued to hold back her tears. I know you can't give up everything to leave with me, so, we should break up. Zihao looked at Chen Xinyan with a heavy heart. He never expected that she would suggest breaking up at a time like this. You're just tired. I'm more serious than ever, Chen Xinyan said firmly to Zihao. I want to break up. There's no chance of recovery. At this moment, even little Seven stepped on the brakes in shock, let alone Zihao. Chen Xinyan, let me remind you, we once promised to each other that we wouldn't give up easily. Are you breaking that promise? Yes, Chen Xinyan said with a shaky voice. Little Seven, stop the car. Zihao did not persist as he maintained the calmness in his voice. But, after Little Seven stopped the car, he immediately got out and walked away without turning back. Xinyan, why did you do this? Little Seven was a little helpless. Chen Xinyan couldn't hold back her tears anymore as she cried, you won't understand. Zihao had already sacrificed a lot for her. This time, he had given away $1 million just to clean up after her. But, if he was to find out that the money he had given Father Chen was used to commit a crime, his conscience would not be at peace for the rest of his life. Since someone was destined to be hurt, Chen Xinyan was going to shoulder it herself. Zihao had a dream and the capability to achieve it. Whereas, she simply wanted to be a stunt double. Their values were completely different. Either way, the public had no idea that the $1 million was from Zihao. If they knew, Zihao would suffer a huge blow. Chen Xinyan understood that she was still young, but that didn't mean that she couldn't bear the responsibility. After returning home and seeing Bai Liua, the first thing that Chen Xinyan did was pounce into her arms and cry, Mom, it's fine. My daughter is grown up now. Everything is honestly fine. It's no big deal. We will go to every single household to apologize and ask for their forgiveness. It's not like it was your fault. Xinyan, You have honestly made Mom proud. We can't let President Mo and Ningji get implicated by this matter." Chen Xinyan sobbed. "Yes, we won't implicate anyone. We will handle it on our own." Bela would never imagine that Chen Xinyan would be so brave. So, seeing Chen Xinyan's bravery, gave her strength. In the end, the mother and daughter promised to shoulder the responsibility together. And, as a result, they became each other's strongest source of support. After leaving the car, Anzihao returned to the police station. He wanted to know what exactly happened and what caused Chen Xinyan's attitude to experience such a drastic change. After coming face to face with Anzihao, the police shared everything that Chen Xinyan had told them. So, finally, Anzihao discovered the reason why Chen Xinyan had suggested to break up. This young girl had suddenly grown up and taken everything upon herself. In the end, Anzihao said to the police, "If I lend a fruit knife to you so you can cut up fruit, but you end up using that knife to kill someone, should I be held liable?" I did indeed transfer $1 million to Chen Tanhao, but I don't think I did anything immoral. We are merely victims to his lies. Chen Tanhao used the $1 million and ended up killing people, so the police decided to seek us for responsibility. What if he used the money to make a huge contribution to society? Would you have rewarded us? When Chen Tanhao tricked us into giving him this money, he presented us with his son's medical records. As police, I know you specialize in moral extortion, but I'm sorry, Chen Kenyon and I will not take the blame for this incident. The most important factor in this case is drugs and alcohol, but I'm sorry. The money came from legal means. We do not need to hold any legal or moral responsibility for any of the above. After speaking, Anzihao left the police station. He understood, at this moment, Chen Xinyan was simply focused on protecting him and would not listen to anything he had to say. She was the most stupid idiot in the world. But, she did this because she knew that Anzihao would be willing to face bankruptcy and much more for her. So, Anzihao was in no rush to contact Chen Xinyan. Instead, he went to look for information regarding the victims. In order to prevent the mother and daughter from getting hurt, it seemed, his upcoming days were going to be quite busy. Meanwhile, Tangning and Moting received news of what had happened from overseas. They originally had a few more days of vacation, but they immediately gave it up and rushed back to Beijing. Chapter 779, Her father killed someone, so shouldn't she make up for it? After returning to China, Tangning originally wanted to sit down and have a good chat with Chen Xinyan, but, the mother and daughter didn't want to implicate Moting and Tangning, so they hid themselves away. But, why were they hiding? They didn't do anything wrong. Because of this matter, Tangning personally visited Anzihao's apartment. As soon as she stepped into the home that had obviously been shared by the couple, Tangning couldn't help but chuckle. It doesn't feel good to be dumped, does it? Huh? Anzihao sat down on the sofa and began drinking some wine. He was dressed in a set of gray home clothes, a casual style that was rarely seen on his body. But, I understand her, I honestly do. I know she doesn't want to implicate me, but, the truth is, I didn't handle this matter properly. What do you plan to do then? Tangning asked as she sat down opposite him. I can't let her lose her identity as an actress. Even if she is to withdraw from the industry, I want it to be her decision and not because of pressures from the public, Anzihao replied as he took a sip of wine. We watched Xinyan get to where she is today. She went from an ignorant young girl to the person she is now. You're to thank for that. Tangning stood up, walked over to Anzihao's side and patted him on the shoulder. I originally thought that you'd give up on Chen Xinyan, but, from the looks of it, I don't need to worry about that. Tangning, I actually need Moting to say something. He's never officially acknowledged Chen Xinyan's identity. However, if he doesn't want to do it, I won't force him, Anzihao said to Tangning. Although Xinyan has never wanted it, she currently requires some strength. Don't worry, I will make arrangements, Tangning said before she left Anzihao's apartment. At times, the world was unfair. Some people were kind, pure-hearted and never did anything bad, but because of implication from family, they would be forced to shoulder problems that they couldn't handle. How many people in this world quietly endured the pain caused by their own family? Tangning did not want Chen Xinyan to endure this kind of pain. Even though Chen Xinyan had an undeniable blood relation with the man, what did she do wrong? After returning home, Tang Ning negotiated with Mo Ting. We should find Zinyan as soon as possible. She shouldn't be the one to lower her voice and act submissive. Most importantly, the incident this time implicated Mo Ting's mother. How could Mo Ting let Bai Liao suffer the repercussions of the jerk's actions? So, Mo Ting gave Lu Che a phone call. Immediately locate my mother and Chen Zinyan. After you find them, immediately bring them back. Chen Tanhao ended up killing 2 people, a middle-aged man and a young man. Amongst the remaining injured people, one of them had a particularly special identity. He was the son of a Beijing government official. He was simply on a day out with friends and never expected to experience such a tragedy. This time, it was definitely impossible for Chen Tanhao to escape punishment, but the implicated Bai Liao and Chen Zinyan were about to suffer the torments of reality. Although Chen Zinyan had appeared in films and attended many programs, she hadn't actually saved much money. If she wanted to compensate one family, she had more than enough. But, when it came to a few families, she couldn't compensate them even if she went bankrupt. Chen Zinyan and Bai Liao discussed amongst themselves and decided to first ask for forgiveness from the families of the 2 victims that had lost their lives. So, early in the morning, they bought everything they needed and appeared at the first home. However, they were immediately kicked out by the family members. Get lost. Did you think this is a place that the 2 of you can enter? Don't make my husband turn in his grave. This was the wife of the middle-aged man. She was extremely emotional. So, as soon as she saw Chen Zinyan, she reacted in the same way as she did in the police station. She grabbed onto Chen Zinyan's shirt and began hitting her. And Chen Zinyan did not strike back. Madam, if you want to hit someone, please hit me. Don't hit my daughter. Stop shedding crocodile tears. What's the point of putting on an act? Hurry and get lost. Chew. The family members pushed the mother and daughter out. From the looks of it, getting forgiveness was impossible. Of course, Chen Zinyan understood how they felt. But, what could she do? If she could bring the dead back to life, she would be willing to sacrifice her own life for it. Afterwards, Chen Zinyan and Bai Liao went to the second household. But, of course, they were treated in the same way. There was no difference. However, they still insisted on visiting the hospital to visit the seriously injured victims. Amongst them was the son of the government official. Did you think, by buying a few gifts and showing up to apologize, you can make up for my friend's life? Let me tell you that it's impossible. I want you to live the rest of your life in guilt. We aren't begging for forgiveness on behalf of that man. We simply want to do what we can, Bai Liao said patiently. No need. Unless you kneel down, don't expect me to forgive you. The man was sitting on one of the hospital beds. Parts of his body were either wrapped in bandages or plastered in a cast. Meanwhile, his family members were even more exaggerated as they called the media to witness the scene. Hurry over to have a look. This is your so-called idol, the daughter of a murderer. People like this should be dealt with in a strict manner. Her entire family should pay the consequences. If we kneel, will you forgive us? Kneel first. The family members ordered in a fierce tone. Although the mother and daughter had already prepared themselves for humiliation, when the moment was actually upon them, they felt extremely wronged and overwhelmed by 1,000 complex emotions. Even so, Bai Liao still decided to kneel. However, at this time, a man appeared from behind her and pulled her up. Auntie, stand up straight. Chen Zinyan and Bai Liao looked at Zihao in shock. They never expected him to appear at this time to help them. The 2 of you did nothing wrong. You don't need to apologize. What do you mean they did nothing wrong? Her father killed someone. The family member behind them yelled sharply. However, Zihao turned around and replied, she's well aware that her father killed someone. Her father killed someone, so shouldn't she make up for it? No, she doesn't need to make up for it. No part of the law states that a child should pay for what their parents have done. The perpetrator will naturally be punished, but she is not at fault at all. I won't allow her to stand here and be insulted by you. Zihao declared firmly. We feel sorry for the shock and pain that you have suffered, so we give you our sincerest apologies and compensation. But, we won't accept personal attacks and scolding because these 2 women are also victims in this entire incident. Her father went missing when she was 6 years old, and as soon as he returned, he killed someone who will relieve her of the pain that she has experienced. The family members glared at Zihao but did not say a word. At this time, Lu Che finally found the mother and daughter. as instructed by Mo Ting, and was prepared to take them back to Hyatt Regency. Chapter 780, No matter how young you are mine. Who told the two of you to take everything upon yourselves? Tang Ning's heart ached for the two. In your hearts, are we the type of people that would step back and watch our loved one suffer, just to save our own pride? Chen Zhenyan glanced to the side at the man who was sitting quietly with the presence of a king. She didn't want to drag Mo Ting down because of her problems. She didn't want Tang Ning and Mo Ting to be criticized because of what the jerk had done. Tang Ning knew what Chen Zhenyan was thinking, so she glanced at Mo Ting. After receiving a glance from his wife, Mo Ting finally spoke up, even if you sincerely want to apologize, you need to make sure that the recipient accepts it. From now on, if you want to do something stupid like this, you need to first get past me. Otherwise, I'm feeding so many lawyers for nothing. Chen Zhenyan did not say a word. If you don't want to implicate Tang Ning and I, the best thing for you to do is to call Lu Che or your manager. You may be young and inexperienced, but they have been around for long enough. If someone else was currently teaching her a lesson, Chen Zhenyan may have rebutted with her own opinion or perhaps argued with Zihao. But, when being lectured by Mo Ting, she was overwhelmed by fear. The fear came naturally because she had utmost respect for Mo Ting. I understand. Did you think that casual gossip like this would be able to affect us? You've completely underestimated us, Tang Ning said after Mo Ting was done. You've certainly put Zihao through an episode of torment. When I went to look for him earlier, he was drowning his sorrows with wine. From now on, you need to handle things in a calm and relaxed manner. You need to have confidence in yourself because you are Ting's sister. Ever since knowing her true identity, Chen Zhenyan had been avoiding the fact that she was Mo Ting's sister because she didn't want people to think that she was nothing but Mo Ting's sister. But, hearing Tang Ning referring to her as Mo Ting's sister, she suddenly realized that she may have worried too much about what other people thought. After all, this was already the undeniable truth. If Tang Ning managed to ignore others' opinions knowing that it wasn't the truth, why couldn't she do it too? Also, if you need something, go ahead and ask him for it. See if he will give it to you. Chen Zhenyan glanced at Mo Ting again, without a word. I have nothing for you because you interrupted mine and Tang Ning's vacation. I'm annoyed right now. The fact that Mo Ting spoke in this way shows that he treated her like a part of the family. Because, even though he was complaining, his words somehow sounded warm. At this time, the quiet Zihao finally spoke up. Originally, I was going to get the lawyers to handle this matter in a low-profile way and to comfort each family, one at a time. But, after seeing the way that Zhenyan and Andy were insulted, I don't feel like doing that anymore. You can leave the big issues for Hirua to handle. From now on, simply focus on managing your artist well. If you let a situation like this happen again, then please return her to the Mo family and Hirua. At this time, if someone was to call Mo Ting a powerful head of the family, no one would say otherwise. But, of course, if not for Tang Ning, he would not be bothered to deal with matters like this. Of course, Zihao replied confidently. The place you're living in isn't safe anymore. Move somewhere else. Everything else, leave it for Ting to handle. As for Zhenyan, get back on track and stop thinking nonsense. After giving her instructions, Tang Ning said to Beilua, Mom, we still need your help with Tang Tang and Gogo. In reality, Tang Ning wanted Zai Yuling to keep Beilua company and to chat to her because the two women understood each other. Other people never seemed to relate to the pain she felt. Okay, what about Zhenyan? Don't worry, she has someone to take care of her. Since Mo Ting had already offered to help, there was no reason for her to continue worrying. As for Chen Zhenyan, she believed that after this experience, her daughter had learned to think for herself. So, it was time for her to let go and let her grow on her own. Afterwards, Zihao dragged Chen Zhenyan away. On this cold winter night, the couple did not return to their apartment. Instead, they went to the resort where they used to have their dates. As soon as they entered the room, Zihao grabbed onto Chen Zhenyan's wrist and pressed her against the wall. Break up, huh? You were actually willing to do that? Zihao stared into Chen Zhenyan's eyes. You've always been the one that's clung to me. For me, you were willing to give up on your acting career? Were you truly willing to do that? Yes, Chen Zhenyan replied. You've already done too much for me. I don't want you to shoulder guilt for the rest of your life. After hearing this, Enzihao suddenly laughed. Should I be laughing at you for being naive? Just because you're nice, doesn't mean everyone else in the world is nice. Why should I feel any guilt? The jerk swindled the money away from me. I can't control what he does with the money. So, why should I feel guilty? You're the only one that's so silly as to shoulder the responsibility on my behalf. I'm not going to avoid this matter, but don't you try to throw it all upon yourself. But, he's my father. That doesn't mean you are at fault. What century are we in? Do you still believe that a child should pay for their father's debt? Enzihao lifted Chen Xinyun's chin, not letting her avoid his gaze. You should be grateful that you have so many people willing to protect you. Since you're so fortunate, you should enjoy it. So, tell me, do you still want to break up? Can I still take it back? I can pretend that I never heard a thing, Enzihao replied. Chen Xinyun suddenly remembered what Tang Ning had said earlier about Enzihao drowning his sorrows in wine. This thought made her heart break. From now on, don't take anything I say to heart and don't drink because of it. I feel like you are always unpredictable. No, to prevent you from suggesting to break up again, I've decided to change a decision I previously made. After speaking, Enzihao carried Chen Xinyun in his arms, placed her on the bed and pressed his body on top of her. You're heavy, endure it well. Isn't this what you always wanted? Enzihao's voice deepened. Are you allowed to hurt me, but I'm not allowed to hurt you? What kind of reasoning is that? Chen Xinyun's face suddenly turned red as she began to feel Enzihao's hand lifting her clothes. Didn't you say that I was still young? No matter how young you are mine. Enzihao lifted Chen Xinyun's arms, preventing her from retaliating. Afterwards, he lifted her shirt up to her chest as his kisses fell upon her body. Chapter 781, I'll be more gentle next time. Zhao, I'm scared. Chen Xinyun had never experienced this before, so she didn't know how to react. Logically, she wanted to retaliate, but her body didn't lie. Relax, leave everything to me, okay? Perhaps it was because she had long desired for Enzihao's body. Or perhaps it was because Enzihao's voice was extremely seductive. Chen Xinyun found herself relaxing. Soon, the couple were immersed in a fiery passion. The desire in the air continued to surge, but Enzihao did not stop after scratching the surface like he normally did. He continued to move down her body, each move more intense than the last. And, in the end, he even surpassed his limitations. I hope you don't regret this. They had already reached this point. Could she still turn back? The couple's souls had long been connected, so their bodies were mere vessels at this stage. Even though her first time was so painful that she felt like she was being torn apart, Chen Xinyun felt a sense of belonging. She now belonged to this man. He was her first and most loved man. After making love, Chen Xinyun was in so much pain that she couldn't move. She simply lay on top of Enzihao's chest, basking in the pleasure of the moment's intimacy. I never thought that doing this would be so painful. I'm sorry. I'll be more gentle next time, Enzihao comforted as he stroked Chen Xinyun's back. Have a nap. I'll bathe you later. Okay. Chen Xinyun was tired, so after closing her eyes for a little while, she ended up falling asleep. At this time, Enzihao carried her in his arms, placed her in the bathtub and gently bathed her. However, halfway, Enzihao felt himself lose control. This time, Chen Xinyun's experience was a lot more pleasurable. After having a bath, she had become a lot more energetic. But, by the time she returned to bed, she was completely exhausted. Yet, at this time, Enzihao wrapped his arms around her. Chen Xinyun quickly hid in fear. Do you want to do it again? Sleep, be good. Enzihao was simply covering her with a blanket. After giving Chen Xinyun a kiss, he ended up falling asleep. Enzihao had already forgotten how many years it had been since he slept so soundly. He simply knew that this was all because of Chen Xinyun. It turned out, he loved this young woman so deeply. That night, Chen Xinyun felt extremely lucky. Not only had Mo Ting acknowledged her, she had finally become Enzihao's woman. She was now truly a woman. But, the effects of the car accident were still present. The next morning, Chen Xinyun arrived at a studio to film a commercial according to a contract she had signed. But, the advertisers had already replaced her and said, "We'd rather compensate for breaching the contract than to use a murderer's daughter. If we use you, Who would buy our product? Your father's incident hasn't been resolved, yet you are in a rush to film a commercial. Don't you think that this is a little unreasonable? You should go home. We don't have the courage to use you." Chen Xinyan had never expected to experience a problem like this, nor did she expect it to be this serious. After returning home, she was too afraid to tell Zihao about it because the matter didn't simply affect her self-esteem. Although Chen Xinyan was Mo Ting's sister, Mo Ting had never acknowledged it in front of everyone. So, she didn't expect him to do it now when there was such a huge scandal. Any normal person would avoid implication, wouldn't they? Soon, Chen Xinyan returned to her normal routine and no longer cared about Chen Tanhao's matters. But, the family members that had rejected Chen Xinyan when she tried to offer compensation, suddenly came looking for her now that she no longer cared. In fact, they even created hype in the newspapers. On top of that, they somehow got a hold of Chen Xinyan's phone number and directly called her. "Miss Chen, my husband is still lying in hospital. Are you going to ignore him? Didn't you previously say that you'd pay for the hospital bills?" Chen Xinyan looked at her phone helplessly. At this time, Zihao grabbed the phone from her hand and replied, "When she previously offered it to you, you didn't want it." Of course we need it. My husband's surgery still requires a large sum of money. I think it's more suitable for you to speak to Chen Tanhao." Chen Xinyan and Chen Tanhao aren't related. The court had already confirmed Bai Lihua and Chen Tanhao's divorce over 10 years ago. "So, I'm sorry, but Chen Xinyan and her mother will not be held liable for this matter." The woman seemed angered by Zihao's response as she erupted into a string of swear words. But, Zihao had already been on the battlefield for many years and had gotten used to situations like this, so he simply held onto the phone, walked into the study room and reasoned with the woman until she apologized. "From now on, if someone tries to call you again, tell them to speak to the police." "I understand," Chen Xinyan replied. Seeing Chen Xinyan with her head lowered, Zihao could tell that Chen Xinyan wasn't in her best condition. So, he stretched out his arm and hugged her. "It will only be temporary." "Yes, I know," Chen Xinyan nodded. No matter how bad that the public made her out to be, she had to trust in Mo Ting and Changning. They were definitely going to resolve the matter beautifully in the end. The victim's family members continued to contact Chen Xinyan, but Chen Xinyan simply called the police each time. The police had already investigated the Chen family and discovered that Chen Xinyan's fathers had indeed gone missing when she was 6 years old and only reappeared recently. As soon as he reappeared, the first thing he did was ask his daughter for money and deliberately tricked her with his son's medical records. The police also discovered that Chen Xinyan had personally approached the family members asking for forgiveness, but was hurt in the process. Chen Tanhao may be Chen Xinyan's father, but he has never fulfilled his duties as one. Reasonably speaking, we can't expect Chen Xinyan to compensate for what her father has done, especially since she's already contacted the families to give her apology. "What about my husband's hospital fees then?" "You can look for a lawyer and get Chen Tanhao to pay for it." When Chen Xinyan contacted her to compensate, she didn't want it and even hit her. Although her anger was understandable, didn't she consider that Chen Xinyan was innocent too? Initially, after the police heard that Chen Xinyan was a celebrity and her father drove under the influence of drugs and alcohol, they immediately jumped to conclusions and assumed that both father and daughter were indecent people. But, the truth soon revealed that Chen Xinyan was at no fault. So, why did she need to shoulder responsibility for what her father had done? The victim's family members were helpless after they realized that the police were of no help. They assumed that Chen Xinyan and her mother had paid them out. So, they decided to contact the media, hoping that public opinion would help them reach their financial goal. Chen Xinyan was simply putting on an act when she contacted us. Afterwards, we couldn't contact her again. After her father has committed such a huge crime, does she think that hiding will help? We demand that Chen Xinyan step out and give a proper explanation. If Chen Xinyan doesn't give us an explanation and present her standpoint, we will not let her leave in peace. Chapter 782, A Powerful Entrance. Chen Xinyan has already returned to work, though, according to my friend, she was about to film a commercial, but discovered she had been replaced. With the size of the current situation, Chen Xinyan's certainly brave. If I was her, I would be too afraid to show my face in public. It's too frightening. From what I see, I don't think this incident will be easy to settle. Just wait for it. When Chan Xinyan can't handle the pressures anymore, she will definitely step out and give an apology. These were discussions that Chan Xinyan heard while in the bathroom before an audition. It was a conversation between a couple of women in the industry. At that time, Chan Xinyan was inside a cubicle. However, she did not hide. Instead, she pretended not to see the two women as she walked right past them and touched up her makeup at the sink. The women were a little embarrassed about being caught. After noticing the calmness on Chan Xinyan's face, they realized she wasn't easy to deal with, so they quickly avoided her by leaving the bathroom. The film that Chan Xinyan was auditioning for was recommended by Tangning. Although a lot of people present gossiped about her, Chan Xinyan was no longer the same as before. If they wanted to talk, they were free to talk as much as they wanted. It was no big deal. After all, it wasn't like she'd lose a piece of herself. Look, it's Chan Xinyan. She actually had the guts to come to an audition. One of you should give the victim's family members a phone call and notify them that Chan Xinyan is here. It could be considered as doing a good deed. Yes, she should be taught a lesson. In the end, someone secretly contacted the media and the media quickly contacted the victim's family members. Chan Xinyan had actually prepared herself for something like this to happen. Even so, when one of the family members actually stormed into the audition hall, she still felt extremely uncomfortable. The emotions she felt were too complex. It was a mixture of guilt and an unwillingness to be wronged. It was indescribable. My husband is still lying in the hospital, unsure of whether he will survive. Yet you are shameless enough to attend an audition and expect to appear in a film? Did you think that a beach like you are worthy? Plenty of people stood around to observe the scene with no intention of stopping the woman from attacking Chan Xinyan. Someone was causing trouble, so this was going to be a good show. However, while everyone expected Chan Xinyan to be put in a difficult position, she ended up remaining extremely calm. Madam, if your husband's life is an uncertainty, you should be talking to the doctor or the perpetrator. Why are you talking to me? Stop playing tricks. Your father is Chan Tanhao. Are you trying to avoid responsibility now that he's done something wrong? I'm sorry, but my father went missing when I was 6 years old. I can't possibly hold responsibility for a father that has never done anything for me. If you were in my position, would you be able to do it? But you can't change the fact that you are related by blood. The woman clung to Chan Xinyan, seemingly waiting for her to give the response that she wanted to hear: money. There are plenty of people that are blood related to my father. I'm not the only one. You're simply clinging to me because I'm a celebrity and you think I make a lot of money, Chan Xinyan said in a cold voice. I previously contacted you with a solution, but how did you react at that time? You slapped me and told me to get lost. I'm sorry, but I still have other matters to attend to. If you don't have anything else, I'm going to leave first. After speaking, Chan Xinyan turned to leave, but the woman stopped her. Don't you dare leave. You better sort everything out with me today. In the end, the biggest question was whether Chan Xinyan should shoulder the responsibility. There were plenty of people present that wanted to make a joke out of Chan Xinyan, including the blood-sucking reporters. Chan Xinyan was surrounded by people. Even when Little Seven used all her strength, she couldn't tear Chan Xinyan away from the crowd. However, at this time, An Zihao and Lu Che appeared with some bodyguards and a lawyer. The first thing they did was complain about the security. What a bunch of trash. How could you just let anyone in and leave the matter for Hairu to handle? Everyone looked at Lu Che and An Zihao, including the reporters who quickly cleared a path to allow An Zihao to reach Chan Xinyan. However, Lu Che and An Zihao were in no rush. Instead, they brought the lawyer to the woman and said to her, from now on, if you have any matters related to Chan Xinyan, please find a lawyer. Initially, due to sympathy, Hairu had originally planned to give you compensation based on moral grounds. But, after all the trouble you've caused, Hairu has decided to withdraw this decision. So, I only have bad news for you. You won't be receiving a cent. Hairu has arrived. Oh God. Hairu's people are actually here. We have nowhere to hide. Let's stop watching and disperse. Someone tried to escape while the scene was in a mess. But, Lucci did not give them the chance to leave. Who leaked information about the second Miss whereabouts? Hairui will find the culprit as soon as possible. Our second Miss has never treated herself as a part of Hairui, but don't you dare forget that President Mo hates it when people bully his family members. Hairui will soon release a statement regarding Chan Tanhao's matter. As for our second Miss, she is of no concern to any of you. If anyone else wants to cause trouble for our second Miss, President Mo will be responding with a letter from his lawyers. Our lawyers have never lost a court battle and are always ready for a challenge. After speaking, Lu Che and Enzi were about to escort Chan Zinyan out, when the family member yelled, "You are protecting a criminal." "This, madam, let me make things clear for you. The criminal is being apprehended." For the sake of justice, Hairui has even told their friends in the legal field not to defend Chan Tanhao because we believe that Chan Tanhao deserves to be punished. Is that not enough? Let me put it this way for you. Our second Miss has not had a father from a very young age. If you were in her position and was thrown into the same situation, would any of you shoulder the responsibility for your father? If you can't do it, then don't judge others with different standards. It will only make you seem fake. So, madam, in what way do you think we are protecting a criminal? The woman had nothing to say, but wasn't willing to admit defeat. She simply stared helplessly at the trio as they left. As for Chan Zinyan, this was the first time she had been acknowledged as the second Miss of the Mo family in public and as Mo Ting's sister. Mo Ting's methods had always been powerful and effective, so Chan Zinyan realized that there was definitely a reason why everyone was convinced by Mo Ting. Second Miss, this is what we will call you from now on. Don't look down on yourself ever again. If you come across people like that woman again, treat them ruthlessly. Only if they manage to stay standing to the end will I admit defeat. Because, that would mean that they can be reasoned with. Chapter 783, Even if someone was upset by it, sorry, they had to endure it. Now, with a strong power like Hairui protecting her, Chan Zinyan slowly gained confidence. She now understood that Chan Tanhao was the one that did something wrong and not her, so there was no reason for her to feel guilty. After Hairui protected Chan Zinyan in front of everyone, gossip within the industry decreased. Even if someone wanted to be nosy, they no longer dared to discuss this topic in the open. To suit her new identity, Chan Zinyan ended up making a few changes to herself. She learned to toughen up because she realized that having a strong background helped her protect the people around her. A little while later, Hairui ended up releasing a statement to clarify the entire incident. They explained that Chan Zinyan had lost her father when she was 6 years old, but upon reappearing, her father ended up asking her for money. No, to be exact, he came back to swindle her for her money. Chan Tanhao did actually have a son and he was indeed seriously ill. So, after Enzi and Hairui worked together to reveal all the evidence, people began to sympathize with Chan Zinyan. Meanwhile, people within the industry couldn't help but imagine themselves in her situation. If not for Hairui, Chan Zinyan would have been destroyed because of her jerk of a father. Being an artist certainly wasn't as glamorous as it appeared to the outside world. There were many instances when an artist's own family became their biggest enemy on their pathway to stardom. So, plenty of her peers couldn't help but show their support. To be honest, if someone is to blame for this incident, Chan Zinyan can't possibly be blamed. It's definitely not a glamorous thing to have a murderer as a father, but having a big boss as her older brother must make her life a lot more complete. With protection from Hairui, Chan Zinyan will definitely pull through this hurdle. I think everyone should move away from this topic now. In the end, Hairui did provide moral compensation for the victims' family members. However, this did not include the family that forced Chan Zinyan to kneel and demanded for money. Hairui wanted to warn everyone not to play any tricks in front of the king of entertainment, because Mo Ting did not pay his lawyers for nothing. Most important of all was Mo Ting's standpoint. A reporter stopped Mo Ting in his track and asked him to share his views. In response, he simply replied, "I think my views are apparent in the actions that Hairui has taken. Although Chan Zinyan's surname is Chen, she is still a part of the Mo family. I hope you all remember this and never forget it." As soon as Mo Ting spoke, his words meant more than 1,000 words put together, even if someone was upset by it. Sorry, They simply had to endure it. A brother like this was cool and powerful, and his words made Chen Xinyun's path a lot smoother. There are quite a lot of awards ceremonies in the new year, and a lot of organizers have sent you invites. Are there any that you want to attend in particular? And Zihao and Chen Xinyun had just relocated and moved into an estate near Hyatt Regency. Although it didn't compare to the symbolic estate for the rich and powerful, it was still owned by the Hyatt brand, so it was safer than most estates. I want to see Chen Tanhao, Chen Xinyun suddenly said to An Zihao with a slight plea. An Zihao understood that Chen Xinyun still had things that were bugging her. Where had Chen Tanhao been all these years, and why did he leave? These were some of the questions that she wanted answers to. So, after a few moments of silence, An Zihao ended up nodding his head. I will make arrangements for you. Thank you, Zihao. It wasn't easy, but Chen Xinyun managed to separate herself from the problems that Chen Tanhao had caused thanks to assistance from Hyrule. So the media no longer dared to drag her back into the mix. Instead, they placed their focus elsewhere. But, of course, Chen Tanhao's incident still attracted a lot of attention in Beijing. After all, it was a huge accident, and Chen Tanhao couldn't possibly escape the death sentence. On the night that Chen Xinyun was to visit the prison, she had a job to attend to. Initially, she felt wronged and angered, but after seeing Chen Tanhao, all these feelings disappeared. Separated by a layer of glass, Chen Xinyun simply sat there without picking up the phone. However, Chen Tanhao trembled as he pleaded, "Xinyun, save me." At that moment, Chen Xinyun felt that no matter what secret he had, it no longer mattered. My brother has helped to settle the people that you injured. As for your seriously ill son, he is also getting medical help, but he will be sent to the orphanage after his treatment is done. As for you, you deserve to die, don't you think? I'm your father, how could you be so heartless? Just wait for your death, Chen Tanhao. Originally, I wanted to ask you why you abandoned my mother and I, but after seeing your face, I feel thankful that you left us. Because, by doing that, you have set us free. Xinyun, listen to me, don't leave. However, Chen Xinyun did not feel like she had anything else to say to the man, so, she slammed down the phone. People often said that family should always be forgiven, because after they die, they are left with nothing. But, Chen Xinyun still chose to not forgive him. Chen Tanhao looked at Chen Xinyun in despair. She was his only hope. He thought she wouldn't be able to watch him being sentenced to death by firing squad, but, Chen Xinyun actually stood up and left. My daughter, Xinyun, you can't just leave me like this. Xinyun, a broken bar. I was wrong. I was really wrong. I shouldn't have taken drugs and drunk alcohol. Xinyun, save me. On the way home, An Zihao held onto Chen Xinyun's hand, afraid that she'd be cold. Are you still upset? It's definitely upsetting to think that he is about to die. But, he deserves it, Chen Xinyun replied seriously. She then took a deep breath and regained her composure. What's done is done. I need to get back in the right mindset. I don't want an incident like this to continue to hurt my mother and I. You are now the beloved princess of Hyrule. And Zihao nudged Chen Xinyun's head. Don't act childishly anymore. Focus on acting well and walk your own path. To her surprise, Chen Xinyun ended up going home with a small award that year. Although, it wasn't a big award, what actor didn't start from something small and work their way up? Of course, Tangning was an exception. Seeing Chen Xinyun happy, An Zihao also began to feel happy. She was happy even though she never thought much about big awards. In the future, I will win lots and lots of awards. Since we're on this topic, the Ftian Awards has begun its voting for the A Viewer's Favorite Drama Award. If you have time, you should gather your fans and tell them to vote for Tangning's drama, The Forensic Concubine. Ningji doesn't need my fans. Chen Xinyun was observant. Even though the Best Actress award was still in uncertainty, Tangning wasn't going to give up on the most popular award. Even though it didn't hold much weight in her heart. Survivor was about to begin filming, and Tangning placed all her focus on this film. However, during this time, Gogo began to get sick more often.
Hit the like, thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for listening.